So we are in the Mishnah and Masechta Megillah, Daf Chaf Aleph, Amud Aleph, 21a, discussing the amount of aliyahs people called to the Torah by every single occasion when we call people to the Torah. On days when the minimum is 3 to incorporate Kohen, Levi, Israel. I've learned to research a little bit. There's some other beautiful reasons why we have 3 aliyahs as a minimum. One of the reasons is when Hashem gave the Torah, there were 3 people involved. It was Hashem, it was the Jewish people who received the Torah, and then there was Moshe Rabbeinu, who's called Oimed, the sarsor, the middleman between Hashem and the Jewish people to bring the Torah to them. So too, there's a minimum of 3 people who get an aliyah every time by the Torah. Further on, it says that the Jewish people who are represented by the one receiving the aliyah. The Moshe Rabbeinu is represented by the one reading the Torah, the Balkareh, and the Hashem is represented by the Gabbai. There was a story brought down in the Yerushalmi Gemara that there was one time someone who was learning Torah sitting down, and they told him stand up. Just like when the Torah was given, everyone was standing. So too one must stand when reading the Torah, and when learning Torah, one must stand. So that's another reason why we have 3. The minimum is 3, but there's no haftarah because people have to get to work. On a day when there is a Musaf prayer, a day when we have an extra prayer like Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed, we say Musaf after Shacharis. On that day, work is not as urgent. You're not allowed to work except for certain situations. So in those days, we add a 4th aliyah, and it's a holy day more than a regular Monday and Thursday and Shabbos and Shabbos Mincha. We explained yesterday.
But it's first actually Chol HaMoed, right?
Right. Chol HaMoed is 4 aliyahs because it's a day we daven Musaf. And you don't have a problem of inconveniencing the tzibur because it's not a day of melacha. You don't add on any more aliyahs also on these days because we don't want to inconvenience the tzibur. Continues the Gemara. What? Some tea. That was Rosh Chodeshim uvechol HaMoed, on Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed, Karin Arba'a. You can have 4 people called to the Torah. Yeah, possible. Thank you. Ein poichsin alayim, ve'ein masifin alayim. We don't do less than that amount, and 4, and we don't add on. Why don't we add on? For 2 reasons. One is because if you would add a 5th aliyah on Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed, it would be even with Yom Tiv, holidays, which have 5 aliyahs, and we need to make a difference. We need to show how Yom Tiv, how holidays are more special, more holy than Chol HaMoed and Rosh Chodesh, and you can't equate them. In addition, there are types of melacha, types of labor which are allowed on Chol HaMoed and which are allowed on Rosh Chodesh, which are davar aved, things which are going to be lost. Right? For example, if you're leaving, if animal was shechted, was slaughtered, and if you're going to leave the skins around, then they're going to spoil and you won't be able to process them to make them into leather. Or then you're not allowed to, then you're allowed to do that even on Chol HaMoed. Things which have an expiration date, you could do on Chol HaMoed. And however, also tirchut the tzibura, you don't want to unnecessarily inconvenience the tzibur. And for that reason, ve'ein maftirin b'navi, you don't say haftorah. We explained yesterday the haftorah is 21 verses from Navi, from prophets, or a complete topic from Nevi'im, which we read after the Torah, and we do that on days when we don't have malacha, when we don't have labor, and we don't work on those days. On days that we have malacha, on days that we work, we don't do the haftarah. And therefore, on Chol Hamoed and Rosh Chodesh, we don't either have a Haftarah on those days. The first person to get an aliyah, to be called to the Torah to read, and the last person are the ones who say a bracha, and the other ones, the other people called to the Torah, do not say a bracha. Now the Mishnah is going to go and give a general formula. Zeh haklal. This is the rule. This is a general rule of thumb when it comes to aliyahs. Kol sheyesh b'musaf v'ein yomtiv karen arba. A regular Torah reading is 3. A day we have a musaf, an extra prayer, like on Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed. We daven the musaf. So then you have an extra aliyah, you have 4. B'yom tov, chamisha, a day like a holiday, Yom Tov, which is completely, you can't do any malacha, any type of work on that day, even in davar avid, even something which could have a major loss. So in those days, you add an extra reader to an extra aliyah, and you have 5, and it's a full-fledged holiday. There's one holiday which is more holy than all the other Yom Tovim, all the other holidays, which is Yom Kippur. B'Yom HaKippurim, Shisha. On Yom Kippur, we call 6 people to the Torah, and the Gemara on Daf Chav Beis, Amud Beis, will give us an additional reason why we call 6 people to the Torah on Yom Kippur. So on Yom Kippur, we have 6 aliyahs. The reason is because it's more strict than a regular Yom Tov. Yom Tov, you're allowed to do any melacha, any work that's l'tzarich achila, for eating, oichel nefesh. For example, you're allowed to carry outside. On Yom Tov and Shabbat and Yom Kippur, you can't, unless there's an Erev, of course. But since there's no food allowed to be eaten on Yom Kippur, you cannot do any melacha, any labor which is needed for oichel nefesh to eat. So since it's holier than a regular Yom Tov, therefore we call up 6 people to the Torah. Uve Shabbos, and a Shabbos is even more strict than Yom Kippur. Because Yom Kippur, if somebody eats or does melacha, or transgresses on Yom Kippur, lights a fire, or the like on Yom Kippur, so the einish, the punishment is kares. Kares is that they die young and the neshama gets cut off. Thank you very much. But there's no physical death penalty. Thank you so much. I'm sorry. There's no actual death penalty, capital punishment, if somebody did melacha, did a forbidden labor, or ate on Yom Kippur. It's a famous story. Somebody comes to the rabbi of the shul on Yom Kippur and he says, Rabbi, I feel like I'm going to faint. I need a drink desperately. Please, can I take a drink? And the rabbi tells him, please, it's Yom Kippur. Try controlling yourself. Comes back a minute later. I literally feel like I'm going to faint if I don't have a drink. Please, what could I do? So he told him, if someone is sick, they could have less than the shiurim. You can have about an ounce every 2 minutes, and that's what you should take. 2 ounces of water. That's what he should do. So the person goes ahead and he does that, and finally comes back to the rabbi and he says, "Wow, thank you so much. That's the last time I'm eating any salted herring before I come to shul on Yom Kippur." Right, so Yom Kippur is, if somebody eats on Yom Kippur, they are on purpose and not for medical reasons, or were cleared by a doctor, they're chayav kares. One type of punishment, which is a spiritual punishment. And Shabbos, if someone does a malacha, a forbidden act on Shabbos, the punishment is skila, a capital physical punishment. And therefore, it's a higher level of holiness, and therefore it has an extra aliyah, an extra person called to the Torah. And you have Shiva, 7 people called to the Torah. Now, all of these holidays, Ein poichasin mehen. You cannot have less than that amount of people called to the Torah. Can't do less. Avol meisifin aleihen. You are allowed to add on more people being called to the Torah. This is what it sounds like from Rashi. That the reason is because of bitul malacha. The reason why I can't call more aliyahs, more people to the Torah, is because people have to get to work. And therefore you can't keep people in shul for too long. Every time you call someone to the Torah, especially now, you make two Mishra Beirachs for them. You can't really keep them. That's according to Rashi. So he says that on the days which have melacha, days which can work, for example, which is Monday, Thursday, Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed, you can't add on. But according to Rashi, other days that you don't work, which is Yom Kippur and Yom Tiv, you are allowed to add on more than 5 or more than 6 aliyahs. The Ran says the reason is you don't want to equate the level of holiness. You don't want to say that now Yom Tiv is on the same level of sanctity as Yom Kippur because you called 6 people to the Torah. So therefore you can't add on any day except for Shabbos. And that's what we do. We don't add on any specific day except for Shabbos.
So on Yom Kippur, you're not adding, right?
In Kippur, you're not adding. And the Ri Lunil, you ever heard of the city of Lunil, city in France?
Oh, yeah.
So Rabbi Yehuda of Lunil is one of the Balei Tosfos. He adds another reason that you can't add on aliyahs on all the days, not to do with equating holiness, but he says on Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed and Monday, Thursday, you can't add on because people have to get to work. Bitul malacha. On Yom Tiv, people have to go cook their Yom Tiv meal. So you're stopping them from going to cook their Yom Tiv meal. You can't hold them back. And on Yom Kippur, where there's no food, he says you can't add on aliyahs because it's a tsar. It's a pain for people to sit in shul longer when they're fasting. So you can't take their time unnecessarily. That's the reason why he says you can't add on, according to the Brid Lunil. So you can never have less. Adding more is only on Shabbos. There's many different shuls which add on more aliyahs. The Minhag Chabad from all the Rebbeim is not to add more aliyahs.
Even on Shabbos, huh?
On Shabbos, even on Shabbos. We don't add more.
Rabbi, on Simchas Torah, we add endless aliyahs.
When we read the Torah, when?
Simchas Torah.
Oh, Simchas Torah. So it's interesting. We don't add on more aliyahs. We only have 6. We have 5 like a regular Yom Tif, like a regular holiday. Then we add an extra aliyah for Chas and Bereshis to be the first to start the Torah, and then Maftir. So we have 7 aliyahs altogether, but we call multiple people to the Torah on Simchas Torah at once.
Oh, that's the minhag. Chabad is supposed to having
more aliyahs.
Where you just repeat it.
Right. Oh, interesting. What you're saying is in other circles they repeat and repeat and repeat, and everyone gets their own aliyah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it. I'm sorry. So you're right about that. I'm sorry. So the Chabad custom is we call multiple people to the Torah at once. So you could have 25, 35 people called in one aliyah, and they pass around the Torah belt, and everyone gives a kiss to the place of the Torah, and they say the aliyah together. The Shabbos, when it's a Chabad custom that everyone gets an aliyah, which is a Shabbos before the 10th of Shvat, the Hilula of the Frierdiker Rebbe, passing the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Shabbos before Gimel Tammuz. Our Chabad custom is everybody gets an aliyah. So then we have multiple Torah readings.
The Shabbos before the 10th of Shvat, you say, right?
Mm-hmm. Just coming up.
I happen to live very near a Lubavitch Center. I can actually do it.
So from early in the morning, from about 8:30 in the morning, we already have many minyanim getting together to read the Torah, so everyone can get an aliyah.
Okay.
So come that day, Shabbos, and Amir Hashem, I'll make sure you get an aliyah.
So it's going to be this coming Shabbos?
The Shabbos before Yud Shvat. Shabbos, this year it's actually Shabbos Yud Shvat. Yud Shvat is on Shabbos. So the day of Yud Shvat, which is Shabbos Parshas Boy. So in 2 weeks from now.
Oh, very, very special parsha altogether.
Correct.
What happened at Yud Shvat?
The 10th of Shvat is a passing of the Frierdiker Rebbe.
Oh.
And just like one gets an aliyah, the Shabbos, before their parents' yahrzeit,
Mhm.
so all Hasidim get an aliyah, the Shabbos before the yahrzeit, istalkus of a Rebbe.
My father's yard site is gonna be actually, after, it's gonna be next week, so I'm gonna be having actually, I guess I'll have to have an aliyah this coming Shabbos. Then no, right?
It's coming Shabbos, yeah, so sure, wherever you daven, make sure to tell the Gabbai, before the Torah reading, wherever you daven on Shabbos. And interesting, for the third time, the Mishnah is going to use the same line. Right? You don't do less. You make laftura on all the days where you don't have malacha, where you don't have work. So Yom Tif and Yom Kippur and Shabbos, you have haftarah, as well as Tisha B'Av, where it's a day we can't do malacha, you can't do work. The ones who are called to the Torah, so the first one to get an aliyah and the last one to get an aliyah make a blessing. The first one makes a blessing before, the last one makes a blessing after, and all the people in the middle, whether it's one person or two or three, or whether the amount of people called to the Torah, only the first one and the last one actually make a bracha, make a blessing. Now, if you look, this sentence was said in our Mishnah 3 times. The first one and the last one to receive an aliyah are the one to make the blessing. We said it when we're discussing Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed. On days when there's 4 aliyahs, the first one to get an aliyah makes the first bracha, and the last one to get an aliyah makes the last bracha. We said this over here on Monday and Thursday when there's only 3 aliyahs. We said that. The first one to get an aliyah makes the first bracha, and the last one makes the last bracha. Why do we have to, if the rule is the same, no matter how many aliyahs there are, whether it's 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 55 for that matter, in some places where they make many aliyahs, probably never 55, but a lot of aliyahs. Why do you have to repeat it 3 times in the Mishnah? Especially as our Mishnah says, Zehaklau, this is the rule. I'm making a general principle, which applies to all different days of Torah reading. Why say this sentence, that who makes the bracha, the blessing, why say it 3 different times? When you're 3 aliyahs, 4 aliyahs, or 5, 6, 7 aliyahs. So there are some who answer, the Rana would say, Rabbeinu Nissim, which says that you would think to say that when you only need 2 brachas, one for the Torah reading, one in the beginning, one in the end, it's only for a regular Torah reading of 3 people. But if you're adding on more, 4, 5, 6, 7, these are all additions. These are not, the reason why we're adding for all of these is not because there's something unique to it, but rather because we will just want to show how it's holier than a different day. It's not the same as a Monday, Thursday. So on Sunday, on a Monday, Thursday, we call 3 people to the Torah, and we explain the reason is Kohen, Levi, and Yisrael. So all different denominations should get. Plus, we said how one represents Hashem, one represents the Jewish people, and one represents Moshe Rabbeinu, the go-between. So you need 3 people being called to the Torah. However, the other days that we have more aliyahs, the reason we're adding is not because we have anything specific to add for that. Rather, the reason given here is to show how it's on a higher level of sanctity. So you add an aliyah to 4, 5, 6, or 7. You say musaf, you have a musaf, there's no malacha, there's not even food, malacha. So you might think that every aliyah, which is for its own reason, needs its own bracha. For example, there's a story, a very, Baruch Hashem, my father, mother, they had a lot to do. They did a tremendous amount of, with the Russian Jews when they, who moved after they left the Soviet Union. tremendous amount that they've done, Russian programs. I'm sure many of you remember. So they made dozens of brisim, hundreds of brisim even, and I don't know, programs with hundreds of people. I mean, impacted hundreds of families for sure. And many people are obviously from today putting on tefillin and all. So there was one time, a certain Russian family that we knew very close to, and our Hashem saying they brought them up, and they're actually today they're actually from entirely, and they had, they got married, everything according to halacha, and then they had their first child, and they arranged a bris. Remember, the bris was the day after Pesach. We have to scramble to get chametz for that day, and then it's the first child. Let's make a pidyon haben. A child that's 30 days old. He's redeemed by the kohen. The child, firstborn sons, really belong to Hashem and to be serving the Beis Hamikdash. And when the age of 30 days old, we redeem them, and they say a kohen could serve in the Beis Hamikdash instead of him. And you pay the kohen 5 silver coins. Pidyon haben at the age of 30 days old. Very special thing. In the halacha, it says if you're at a pidyon haben, you eat from there. It says if you fasted 84 fasts, 84 fasts for tshuva. So Dovi, if you don't have to go on a diet for 84 days after eating from a pidyon haben.
It'll really be good then.
Right.
Special program to do that.
But Baruch Hashem, at this pidyon haben, after the pidyon haben was done for a child, and my father with the excitement explains what it is, and the father of the child says, "Hey, I'm a firstborn."
Oh my goodness.
Says, "Do you have older brother or sister?" No. His father, Kohen or Levi, they ruled out all the things that would disqualify, or naturally all the things that would disqualify somebody from having a pidyon haben. The father of the child says, "Hey, I need a pidyon haben too."
And there's a relationship actually to precious bow which is coming because Hashem and I think it's
correct. Yes. It mentions about all your firstborns. Correct.
Because Hashem spared.
In this week's parasha it says, "B'ni b'chari Yisrael," my firstborn son Israel. Correct.
Because Hashem spared the firstborn of the Jews.
Correct. That's Parshas Boy.
So originally they were supposed to be the condom, but because everybody except the tribe of Levi sinned with the golden calf, so therefore.
Correct. At one point, the Bechurim work on correct, and the sin of the firstborn. So, and by when when you make a pidyon haben, you make a bracha hagafen and drink a cup of wine. And then when he made the second pidyon haben for the father, and I remember him buying the coins back off, right? And said okay. So then they made a second pidyon haben. And Rabbi Rosenblum Sr., who was there, he said the Kohen makes a second bracha, a second blessing on the second cup of wine, because it's two different mitzvahs. Makes another hagafen. Rabbi Rosenblum Sr. Right? He make a second bracha. Rabbi Rodel was a Kohen, Allah Shalom. And he drink a second cup of wine, but he made a second bracha hagafen. He says it's connected to the mitzvah of pidyon haben. So you make a second bracha hagafen. After that, the grandfather of the child says, "Well, I'm also firstborn."
Holy cow.
Anyways, both grandparents were firstborn, but only one of them had the halachic qualifications to be to have a pidyon haben.
One of them may be Ben.
No, one of them I think was a second child, because the first child was a stillborn. Whatever. So I said, third pidyon haben, Baruch Hashem, we made a third pidyon haben, and the Kohen made a bracha hagafen on a third cup of wine, and drank it. And again, later on, two different families. One was two different Russian families who were invited to this event. One of them was very active and kind of other Russian families, and one of them, and he was from and everything. But he says he never had a pidyon haben. He never thought about it. He had his own pidyon haben, a fourth one, and all the same one, all the same meal. You should have seen the scene. It was like pandemonium going on. And the Kohen drank the fourth cup of wine and made a bracha with it. And then there was another family there, or coming more from, parents made their wedding about that time, a kosher wedding. Says he also never had a pidyon haben, made a fifth pidyon haben. Kohen drank 5 cups of wine with 5 brachas. Plus, he led the benching, a bracha on a kos, a bracha on a cup of wine for benching. So he had 6 cups of full becker, 6 cups of wine.
And it had been driven home, right?
And actually somebody else drove him home. But it was very, very exciting, Baruch Hashem.
And I was wondering if she's
So now why do you have to make a separate bracha by each one of these pidyon habens?
yeah.
Because when I was a little child, I was 11 or 12. I got older, I looked into the halacha more. There's certain reasons we make a bracha hagafen. One is a bircha hanenin. You want to enjoy wine, you got to make a bracha. One is a birchas mitzvahs, a bracha on the mitzvah. A mitzvah necessitates a cup of wine, which necessitates hagafen. So every individual mitzvah necessitates that bracha. So the bracha hagafen at that point is no longer a bracha on wine, a bracha for enjoying it. Rather, it's a bracha for the mitzvah. Because to make the mitzvah special, you're doing it on a cup of wine, which makes Hashem and people happy.
Did these couples have to go through a second marriage because their first marriage was not a halakhic?
I've been posting online many pictures, but yeah, we've made many. My parents have made many chuppahs, Baruch Hashem.
Because these people were married secularly, but not married religiously.
Correct. Right, and one of them actually couldn't have children, did not have children until they married according to halacha, started keeping taras mishpacha, became pregnant immediately right after keeping taras mishpacha. So in a similar sense, you would think that one aliyah, every aliyah is its own special thing. And the first 3 aliyahs are one unit, right? For Kohen Levi Yisrael, it's a Monday, Thursday unit. You need one bracha before and after. So therefore, the Mishnah says you need one bracha before and after. Comes to the 4th aliyah for Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed, you might think, okay, now this 4th aliyah is its own unit, it's its own special mitzvah, because we want to show the specialty of Chol HaMoed, the specialty of Rosh Chodesh. We're adding a 4th aliyah. We should have a new bracha for the 4th aliyah. Comes a Mishnah, I have to tell you,
Participating, terrific.
okay, let's get back on. I don't know why that happened, unfortunately. But I don't know why that happened, but okay. Let's continue now with the Gemara. But I have another question for you. According to the Mishnah, halacha nowadays, everyone makes their own bracha, especially that we have one bakayr for the whole crowd. Right? And there's interruptions. At any rate, I don't know if people's attention spans nowadays, usually people are interrupting in the middle of the Torah reading. But if there's no interruptions, why can't we make the klalos, like the longest aliyah in the Torah is Shishi, the 6th aliyah in Parshas Kisavai, because it's all the curses. So it's something like 68 psukim or something, the longest aliyah in the Torah.
We don't want to divide curses.
Right, we don't divide it among the people.
Yeah.
You don't want to stop in the middle.
You have this curse, you have that curse.
But if there's only one bracha before and after, and there's no bracha, there's no interruption in the middle, so then why divide it? Let us split it up into more manageable aliyahs. So we have Reb Chaim Abulafia. Have you ever heard of him?
Oh, sure.
Who settled he came from, I think, Syria, and he settled in Egypt, in Tiberia, I mean.
You mean actually Abulafia or
Reb Chaim Abulafia.
I think he came from Spain, or his family.
He came from Spain?
Or at least his family. And one of them actually wanted to go to Rome to convert the Pope to Judaism. And another, it's like you're going to conquer Rome. he didn't succeed.
Correct. He had tremendous miracles over there in
Yeah.
Tveria, where there was a siege by the French, I think.
Ah,
And he said that, don't worry, the French are not going to conquer Tveria. And they were shooting cannons at point blank range, and the cannonballs were bouncing off the walls of the city. So B'chaim Balafia, he has a famous Masechta Seifrim. Right? So he writes that there's actually, you're supposed to make your own separate bracha on the Kollel for the curses, not included with everything else. This is this idea that the last person makes a bracha, but the first one and the last one makes a bracha, is a reason why the minhag started that from the last one to get an aliyah is usually the most, you call up the Rav, you call up someone important for the Haftarah. This is the source of it, because they're the one who would make the bracha. The first one is always a kohen, so you call a kohen and he would make the first bracha. For the last one, you would call somebody who can make the last bracha. You would always honor it with a rabbi, with someone distinguished. In addition, it says a Kollel, the one to conclude the reading of the Torah, get them after, noitel schar kulam, receives the reward of everybody, of all those an equivalent reward as everyone together who read the Torah, because they make the bracha after. And therefore, you also give it to a Adam Gadol, to a special person. The Gemara, or we have 20 minutes, let's learn Kunter Sumayan. Tomorrow, we'll do it tomorrow. Let's have a new chat, a new share, Maimer Chav Zayin, the second to last Maimer in Kunter Sumayan. We're going to do some wrapping up.
Yeah, companion sounds actually dangerous. You don't want artificial intelligence taking over the shear. You see underneath actually you have different things you can click on. So not the AI companion.
AI companion, oh yeah.
The last thing you watch for your shear is an AI companion.
I wouldn't mind, but the only thing is, if I make an AI companion, I think everyone in this share will make an AI listener. Okay, so we're holding here Maimer 27. Let's make this full screen. Which we're making, or wrapping up, you could sort of say, everything we learned here in Kunter Sumayan. We act in a way of toikef of the neshama, make the neshama shine. The more you strengthen your good, you could say what's called antibodies.
Yeah.
So then the disease can get in. If you strengthen your neshama, your sensitivity to physical things dims, and then you're able to appreciate kedusha, holiness.
Which then probably explains actually it's the Rebbe, because
Yeah.
the Rebbe was he would just concentrate on spiritual. One time you have to have a procedure. And he said, "No, I don't want any anesthesia."
The Rebbe Rebbe or the Majlis Rebbe?
Actually, the Rebbe, he didn't have any anesthesia.
Yeah.
And he wasn't feeling any pain. But it must have been that that's like he was so
No,
devoted to
the
his
story. The Rebbe several times brought down the story of the Majlis Rebbe,
Oh,
which he went to Vienna for an operation for near the end of his life, and they told him they don't want to give him anesthesia because someone in his age and his condition, they don't know if they could wake up from it. So he says, I'm going to sing a niggin, and when I'm come to the high part of the niggin, you could do the operation, and I won't need any anesthesia. You don't. I won't feel a thing either. Do it while I'm at the high part of the niggin of the song, and that's what they did. He was so into the niggin that he didn't feel anything from the. What happened? Yeah, but the Rebbe Rebbe, he was someone which fasted every single day. He didn't eat till who knows what time. He subsisted on nothing, gave away everything he had. Of course, the Rebbe is it says in a Mendel Futterfass, first time he met the Rebbe, this is in Russia, And he asked, who is this? And told him, Rebbe Rebbe. And remember, Futterfas was someone who had the spirit of Lubavitch very strong. And he wasn't too impressed by other people of other circles. And they're telling him about different things he does. He goes to the mikveh every single day in the ice. He wasn't impressed with that. Remember, Futterfas did that too. Because he fasts every single day till the end of the day, till the middle of the night sometimes. Sometimes he forgets to eat. He got impressed. Why? Because he knew what that meant.
He did it himself, these things.
He understood it. He understood exactly what it was. And he was very, he got very impressed with the different Sarah. But they were extremely tight with each other. Correct.
It's just like, actually, it's like, sometimes you hear somebody actually, say, as far as how good somebody is in a particular thing, and if you do that same goodness, you feel, well, I'm very glad for him, but I'm not as impressed because I do the same thing. But then when you hear what this person does actually that you don't do, they say, "Ooh, now I'm impressed."
No, again, but someone who doesn't fast every day may not be as impressed by hearing that. Someone who does it and experiences it could be much more impressed by someone who has done it. We're discussing the idea of someone whose neshama, whose soul shines. The godly soul shines. When you see them, the neshama shines. The neshama is just shining through. The soul is shining through. And you can feel it on people sometimes. It's not something you could necessarily explain. It's something that you could feel much more. There are some people which their godly soul is openly shining with them. They understand spiritual, godly explanations and concepts. And they are people which work on themselves. We brought the example of Reb Lev Yitzchak Berdichev and other people, other chassidim, which are Beinani of the Tanya. Someone could be a Beinani, right? Is specifically someone who's Oisk Arbet, someone who worked on themselves very strongly, is what someone who's categorized as Beinani. Someone who is not, someone who's naturally, you could say, is naturally holy and spiritual, and they work on themselves as well, but not necessarily are considered to be a Baal Avodah, someone who worked on themselves. More than the intellectual, it's the work and the toil that they put into it. In every single thing that they learn, they find, how can we apply this to our life, to what we do? When the Rebbe would say many explanations on the Rambam, the way they printed in the Sfarim, many of them are that first you have the explanation, halachic explanation, the nigla intellectual explanation, and then you have the lesson you can learn. But many times when the Rebbe would speak the Sikha, it was said in the other. At first, the Rebbe would say the halacha, then the lesson, and then what you can learn, then the pilpul and the deep nuances going back and forth in halacha, because the halacha, the Torah, was a outcome of how you apply what you're learning to yourself. And the godly feeling overpowers the natural sensitivity that one has by themselves. So one who's really working on themselves, they're not really affected by the Yetzer Hara so much, because they're not going to, they could a lot of times call on the bluff of the Yetzer Hara. The Hoidos, Mischadish Inyanim, Etzlam Inyanim Beurim Vehesbedim. Besichlim Becheshbenis and Eskarim La'el. If you remember, in the very beginning, we saw at the very beginning, we spoke about different levels of tainug, of pleasure. We said the lowest level of pleasure is a physical pleasure of eating and drinking. Then comes a pleasure of music, hearing, right? People have immense pleasure when it comes to music. Then comes a higher type of pleasure of emotions. We overcome with emotion in a certain way. Then comes a higher level of pleasure of seichel, of understanding. But all these things are physical pleasures. The highest type of pleasure is a godly pleasure, which is a pleasure of where you lose yourself. And a person who is by nature godly, because you have a godly soul, our pleasure should be only in godly things. Because of what use is it that someone who has such potential, right? Someone who could, as it says in the Yom, he has a power, he has ability to make holes in diamonds, cut diamonds, and what's he doing? Baking bread. And the purpose of everything is to achieve more and more. And if you ever speak to somebody who will say you think they're so wealthy, and they're like, those people are wealthy. You see, and you finally speak to that person. The other people, they're the real wealthy ones, right?
Yeah.
People want to achieve higher, even in physical things. For sure, when it comes to spiritual things, to learning Torah, to understanding, the purpose is to connect yourself to become greater. And learning Chassidus, and the more you learn Chassidus, the more it refines a person, the more it makes a person not sensitive to physical things. So the saying goes, "Tukfa the gufa chulshul nishmasa." The strength of the body is a weakness of the neshama, of the soul. So if a person who's so great, a part of Hashem, and what they connect themselves with is physical pleasures, and you're receiving everything and lowering yourself to the physical pleasure, at the same time, when you could really be involved in much greater things. And this is called a shtus, right?
Mhm.
What's shtus? Foolishness. And the entire Kuntras is talking about shtus, ruach shtus, how to overcome the foolishness. So a person who works on themselves, and none of the physical or anything that the Yetzer tells them is really getting through to them, they don't get excited. I heard, do you get excited by hearing the Seahawks won a game? No. How about the Steelers won the game? Not really. Why not? I can show you thousands of people in Pittsburgh who are very excited, hundreds of thousands, right? Why? Because your sensitivity isn't really attuned. It doesn't really talk to you so much, correct? And someone, a Yid who works on themselves is much more sensitive to godly things, and if a physical thing happens, it doesn't really affect them so much. So this happened. I don't know, the builder is taking an extra 2 months, and this. If people which work on themselves, people which are naturally like that is excellent. But what Chassidus is striving to achieve is to get people to change, to work on themselves. Constantly developing and constantly growing more and more mind over matter. There is a story of the Rebbe Rashab during one of the government called conventions in Russia to discuss how we could help the Jewish people by taking away all the rights, especially the rights of freedom of religion and freedom of education and so forth. And the Rebbe Rashab was saying one specific thing, that we can't compromise in any specific way. And there was a certain rabbi, a very big Talmid Chacham, saying, nope, you're allowed to compromise. You're not allowed to fight the government on this. And so this person said about the Rebbe Rashab, the Rebbe Rashab, he should, he should be more of a Yid. He should be more Yer Shemayim than he is. If he's a real Yer Shemayim, then he would agree with me. And so the Rebbe Rashab heard that, and he said back to him, he should become more kliger, more wiser. The Rebbe Rashab's mother, Rebbe Rivka, heard of this, and he says, I see from here clearly that person is actually a much bigger tzaddik than my son, than the Rebbe Rashab, because his bracha to the Rebbe Rashab is becoming fulfilled. That the Rebbe Rashab is constantly, going ahead, adding on more hidurim, adding on his Yiras Shemayim all the time. And my bracha, my son's bracha, the Rebbe Rashab's bracha to this individual that he should become wiser, is not being fulfilled. So that person is a bigger tzaddik than the Rebbe Rashab.
in others, it was the same rabbi who had said you should compromise, right?
Correct. Right, so the Rebbe Rashab was saying he should become wiser, and he said he should become frimmer. The word we use is frimmer. We just don't want to use like a frimmer. He should become more religious. He said about the Rebbe Rashab, he should become more frimmer, and the Rebbe Rashab said, he should be smarter. So he said his bracha was fulfilled and his bracha was not fulfilled. Somebody whose neshama is not as manifest within him, and he listens to the Yetzer, and it's a hard struggle, So what's the solution? The solution is don't get yourself involved in the details of what the Yetzer is trying to tell you, this and that. Don't get yourself involved in fighting and dealing with every detail. Rather, resist everything and take one stubborn quality and say that I am going to resist the nefesh bahamis in everything I could. And basing yourself on, as we explained in the previous chapter, every Jew has the essence of their soul, the essence of the neshama. The essence of the neshama is so powerful that it could overcome anything, overcome any opposition, and overcome any of the shtusim of the foolishness of the Yetzer Hara. And therefore, just connect yourself to that by your second soul that you have, the essence of your soul, and that's the solution to deal with the temptations, which is you're being enticed by your nefesh bahamis, by your animal soul. Now, one thing Jews are very good at is being stubborn.
Yeah.
Right?
Stiff neck.
Stiff-neck nation, we are called.
That's why you all have a lot of problems in one of them.
That's why Jews have stiff necks, correct.
The DNA.
Right. There's a famous joke. There was somebody came to the dentist and he says, his tooth, he has a toothache, he needs his tooth pulled. And he asked the dentist, which tooth is it? He says, I'm not telling you. Dude, I can't, I'm not telling you. And he pulled one tooth, is it? I said, I'm not telling you. He pulled all of his teeth. At least I didn't tell you. Right?
Well, at least you never has to worry about another tooth being pulled.
Oh, no. Right.
We're not supposed to be stubborn, only stubborn to do the mitzvahs, but.
Correct.
I wouldn't be stubborn.
Now, stubbornness is our worst trait, but it's also our best trait. And if it's like something that we use, like atomic energy. If we use it in a good way, it can make cheap electricity for the whole world. If you use it in a negative way, then it could kill thousands of people.
It was also actually caused us to survive because all the other people they viewed actually, the God says, we have jurisdictions. So in other words, while we're here, we're going to worship this God, right? So then you were sent into exile. But now we have to work with the God actually works. It's with Jews, we're in Israel, we're constantly being stubborn, not following Hashem. Suddenly we're in exile. Now it's going to have your own good assimilate.
Right.
No, we have to be stubborn. Now we're going to be sticking to Hashem.
Right. Baruch Hashem. So a child is very stubborn sometimes about the most silly things. Right?
Mhm.
Stubbornness is not necessarily a negative thing. It could be a very positive trait. That's how you overcome any adversity. When you keep up to something, it's through stubbornness as well. And this is a good trait that Hashem gave to us. To be, not to compromise, not ready to give up someone's life. Give up your life. There's stubbornness in other ways as well. There's stubbornness of those who have a set time to learn Torah, and come what may, they never stop it. There was a Rabbi Rifkin in Kfar Chabad, So he was a rabbi, could have been a big rabbi. His kids and grandkids are shluchim. But when he first moved to Kfar Chabad, he opened up a cow farm. And the Rebbe, he always wanted to stop, working with his cows, and the Rebbe told him he cannot stop. You always have to. Here's just a picture of him. Right, as Rebbe Rifkin with his cows. He always needed cows. And Rebbe always told him to be busy with cows, and at different conventions in Israel, you have all the young cow herds, and the styling from small farms to mega farms. And Rifkin would always show up, and everyone's like, "What? Rifkin's still around?" Of course, you put on film with people over there, but bring with them. And even when he got old and he wanted to stop, the Rebbe told him he can't stop. All right, so Rabbi Rifkin in Kfar Chabad, he always kept up his cows, and he never stopped. But he had a set chavrusa every single day. I think it was Rabbi Lando of Bnei Brak when he first lived in Kfar Chabad, and later on changed to somebody else. But the set chavrusa was every day, I think at 1 p.m., middle of the day. Nothing could stop it. I think not even when his wife went into labor. He learned for a shorter time, but nothing would stop it. In a way of Angsha Erev, stubbornness. There were many times when there was a flood on his farm, or there was a cow running away, he's going to get lost. Every cow that gets lost is a financial loss. Nothing would stop him from having a set time for a share. Share went on for like 50 years or 60 years, and they never once were late to the share, unless they were out of the country, but they never once were late to the share in all the years they learned together. Why? Because this is a quality that you have. So this is something to do without any stopping. Anyways, we'll